Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Constantine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, here in the easterly and southerly outpost of Antananarivo, Madagascar, which is the furthest satellite from the home campus that you can find in the world right now. So we are here to talk about a topic that comes up in our EdD in Progress series, writing about your workplace. And we're going to use a particular focus for this specific assignment in one course, but the principles apply to many different assignments, not just in the EdD program, but in, for example, healthcare administration, in our Master Business Administration program, where you have to write about your workplace and to take the readings to integrate them and to apply them to your setting to solve problems or to improve processes, etc. Because we're fairly late in the semester, I'm going to skip some of the normal introduction about talking about the Writing Center services and just point out briefly that we archive all of our webinars on the Writing Center webpage, and that if you scroll down on the webinar page, you'll find that there's a sorted guide where you can click on your program and see the webinars associated with that specific program. All right. So we're going to start by delving first into the assignment description and then use that as our launching pad to talk about synthesis and application and how to go into the outlining and setting up your paper. So we're looking at an assignment from Leadership 756, the Week 6 assignment number 1, the Social Pollution Initiative. And it starts with a preamble telling you to read and view the resources assigned for the week. And then we move into the main instructions. So you're writing a 3 to 5 page paper. It's 3 to 5 pages, not counting the cover page, not counting the references. Where you're supposed to first synthesize the readings and research from the week, so over 1 or 2 pages, and of course introduce the paper. Then the rest of the space will be mostly devoted to the application, where you discuss how you would address these challenges in your own workplace. So if this first part is more general, looking at, okay, here's what that suggests should be happening on a larger scale, this is zooming in on your own workplace and seeing what it has to say about what could or should be done there. Alright, so if we look at these specific instructions here, for part 2, discuss who would address the challenges to health in the workplace. And so you're asked to list the challenges that you see, or some of them. Make sure you don't give too many, because then you won't be able to do it in 2 to 4 pages. Then how you would address at least one of those challenges. Okay, so this is saying you should be selecting some, but not necessarily all of them. And what initiatives would you develop to combat stress and burnout? And then specifically the phenomenon of social pollution. And any other course concepts that you've been studying that you would bring up as things you could incorporate, and then how would you do that? And then there is this thing that is worded as advice. We recommend using the following headings and subheadings in your paper. Whenever you see a note like that, follow it. Treat it as a commandment, because that tells you, oh, here's something that the person grading your paper is not only suggesting, but expecting that you would do. And then if we look at the rubric for this, we find that it is quite specific. It lists the things that are here on these 2 pages. And some of them are grouped together, but that's fine. But pay particular attention to the distribution of points. So out of the 13 points, 1 is just for general quality control, AP formatting, etc. But of the points that are left, the 12 that are left, we have 6 of those going into that discussion of the other concept from the course. So that should be a not small section, at least a full paragraph, I'd say. 5 out of the 12 remaining points go into the health issues and social pollution. So that's definitely something that should be a longer section. And discussing challenges to the workplace in terms of health. That's a quarter of those 12 points. So as the instructions suggest here, that the synthesis section should be shorter, 1 to 2 pages. If we look at the distribution of points, we see it's 2 out of the 12 non-formatting ones. And that is suggesting that it should be on the shorter end. You don't need to do 2 pages. 1 is fine. Because, again, this is overall supposed to be 3 to 5 pages of content. So, keeping in mind the distribution of the points, make sure you don't go too long in the synthesis section and save your discussion of your workplace for the application section. Now, ordinarily we would talk about how to search for literature on this, but if we look at the instructions here, you're specifically told to read and view the things that have been assigned for this week, and that to draw on at least something from a previous course. So we're not going to have to do a search here. Instead, we're going to jump right to writing synthesis and how to explore that. Now, I do want to emphasize that you can start planning out your paper before you do the reading, but make sure you do the reading. The reason why you might want to start beforehand is that it helps give you an idea of what kinds of things you're looking for. So you'll be particularly well suited to spot the kind of details that the paper is asking you to provide. So for the synthesis section first, a lot of what the synthesis will do for an assignment like this is not just saying, okay, here's what people said, that's the summary part, but what are the implications of those things? Like, based on these findings or based on this model, what should be done in general? And then the specifics as to your workplace, those go into the application section. Now, sometimes when you're writing a synthesis paper, you will be able to put them all in one section, but here they've very specifically given you a list of things to talk about the application, and you're going to need most of the space they give you to write that up well. So how do you show that you are providing synthesis and not just summary? Well, most of the time, synthesis sentences will not have citations or will not have citations for the sentence as a whole, as opposed to citations to identify the particular articles from which the information you're discussing comes. You can also indicate this through phrasing. Things like, this suggests that, or as a result, consequently, because this, then something should be done. Should is being a great word to give a recommendation. Now, for this section, again, you want to make sure that you are following the outline for the paper that's provided by the instructions. So keeping the synthesis general here by not going into specifics of workplace, but talking about, what does this mean for the industry? Or what does this mean for businesses or organizations in general? And if you need some additional input or reminders about that, we have our dedicated synthesis webinar. And with that, let's move to the next section, because the application section is fairly substantial here. So here you want to be grounding your comments in the setting. You want to not only identify your workplace clearly, but make sure that you are contextualizing your remarks in the discussion of the workplace with lines like, in my workplace, blah, blah, blah. Or the problem here identified by this author in the literature, or they suggested that you do this, and therefore, in my workplace, because this is here, we should do that. So you want to connect it and make sure that it's not just you're saying, well, here's what I want to do, but grounding that by aligning it with things from the literature. And so here's the place where we recommend narrowing the scope and start discussing specific details of the setting or workplace. You won't be able to discuss everything about the workplace, but for your chosen things, go into some detail. Well, how do you know this? What is the significance of it? What does the literature say should be done? And can this be practically implemented? Now, for this, you're going to have to give some context. And I'm going to suggest that you give only as much context as is absolutely needed to understand the remarks. Because you don't have a lot of space here, so let's stick to the most essential parts and not give unimportant details, or at least unimportant for what you're trying to do. Here's an example of too much detail. If you're describing your workplace, my workplace is located in Coppell, Texas, a city in northwest Dallas County that has 38,659 residents and was incorporated in 1955. Blue Yonder Incorporated was founded after a conversation in a bar. Oh, well, if you are looking at that, you'll see that there's a typo there, which is a great reminder that you should always be on the lookout for things that can be improved. So if you are working on something like that, go ahead and take a moment and fix it, because there's no time like the present, and it's usually fastest to just do a quick cross out or delete and then continue going rather than trying to wait till the end and hope that you remember all of them. Alright, so here's an example of how to orient. Give the big picture view and specifics that matter to what you're doing. Like, my workplace is a small software company of about 24 employees located in the Dallas metro region. So we have the general area, so that might give you some idea about regulations or the regulatory framework or the job market or things like that. So there's a lot that saying just Dallas metro region leads the reader to. My workplace is a small software company. Okay, so if you were, say, on an oil rig, working on some oil pumping or something like that, then of course that would be a very different environment than, oh, it's a small software company, only a couple dozen people, and it's in this particular cultural area in a major city or the metro area around a major city in the United States. Do you need to know Coppell, Texas specifically? Not unless you're going to be discussing it further and those details are relevant. Alright, so this next section, and so searching, again, this assignment asks you to use the week's readings and to bring back at least one concept from a previous week in this class. And that one concept, or one or more concepts that you discuss, you should make sure you have a citation there. And you'll probably want to go back to the modules to remind yourself about what was read in each week, and then use that to fill in your reference list and citations when you are referring to that source and summarizing it yourself, or quoting it. With the word limits, with the page limits, I wouldn't recommend actually having a variety there. I would recommend that you don't go back and forth between summary and quote. Just give us summary and then your synthesis there, because you can summarize the text to be, in almost all cases, more concise than the original text that you're quoting. So in this particular paper, I would keep quotations minimal or take them out, just not include any. Alright, so this next section we're going to use our APA course paper template. And you can see I have here a blank copy of our APA course paper template. Make sure to fill in the title of the paper. I'm just going to get rid of this placeholder text. And then I always recommend that you start with the instructions, because the instructions is a guide to what your professor is going to be looking for in the order that they're going to be grading or looking for it to grade. Now you can see here I have pasted in the instructions here, and some of it, like here the guideline to 3 to 5 pages, says you should have an introduction and a conclusion. Okay, yep, those are good things that you should be doing in your papers by default. But we won't have a heading for the introduction because there's an APA rule saying don't do that, but we can certainly add one for that conclusion. And if we look here, we see that there is a set of recommended headings and subheadings already. Okay, so if we look at this, say, okay, there should be conclusion, as we discussed earlier. And so we'll go to the styles pane, and making sure we're clicked into that line, we're going to make that an APA Level 1 heading. And then you can at the conclusion later. That's usually the easiest and fastest part of the paper to write. But where will these other ones go? Well, in this case, your introduction should introduce the paper as a whole, outline the major content areas of it in the order they're discussed, and state what it is that you're exploring. After that, we're going to have a synthesis heading. So again, I've popped out the styles pane here, and I can just make sure that first I'm clicked into that line and hit AP Level 1. And you can cross these out as you go. Alright, application. So synthesis and application, we see Part 1, Part 2. Those are on the same level. So same heading level, AP Level 1, AP Level 2. But looking at challenges to health in the workplace and initiatives, those are clearly under application here, because you can see, challenges that's mentioned here. This is mentioned there as well. That's about the same thing. And then initiatives, that's more about where you go next, and probably with this, possibly including that. So from this we see, okay, there is going to be in this case you can just literally copy and paste that. And we'll apply AP Level 2, so you see that's flush left, well that is centered. And then there are a couple places where the next one could go, initiatives. I think that's probably going to go here. Because this is where you go from, okay, here's how the workplace is right now, to here's how you would do something about that through initiatives. Now, could you move this down a little bit? Yeah, you could even interrupt it here so you have this discussion up with that. So long as it's clear what you're doing and why you're doing it there, you can put this in this section or in that one. But in general, you want to make sure that you are following the clearest logic to yourself, and then making sure the structure is, and the why for the rationale for the structure is clear to other people. So you can just start typing in your response to these. I recommend perhaps doing some bolding or italics so that it's clear which part is the instruction, which part is your addressing in that or answering it. Let's talk about references for a moment before we wrap this up. Because it's the end of this semester, we know that your time is short and valuable, but it is helpful to make sure that you are doing your due diligence to get full credit. So let's take a look at the readings for this week. Now, looking at this, we see the readings here, and something to keep in mind is that these are not necessarily exactly in APA style. So for example, if you were putting this into your reference list, we would need the rest of the authors there. And we would need things like the journal volume number, issue number, page range, or article number if it doesn't have pages. But it's still a helpful thing to start with this as a time saver. So if you think you're going to be using all of these readings, you can go ahead and just start copy and pasting them into your references list. And after that, make sure you select match destination formatting. Well, don't worry about the bullets, we'll get to that in a moment. And we're starting from this point, again, of assuming that you're going to refer to all of these. But remember, in APA style, you should only have things listed in your reference list that you cite. Now, as you can see, there's a little bit of cleanup that will need to be done here to make sure that this is formatted correctly. And one of those is making sure this book title is italicized. To take out this piece of web code, in this case, make sure that the title of the journal and the volume number are italicized. So this is an abbreviation of the page range. We don't use the abbreviations for the page range in APA style, so write that out. This should actually be an N dash. Make that ink active. And you also need to make sure that these are in the correct order. So if you're copy and pasting and you end up with bullets, you just select that and then select the bulleted list tool, and it goes away. Now I'm going to select this whole reference list now and going to apply the APA reference style, which will add a hanging indent for anything that doesn't have it already, and we also got rid of some other stuff here. Now, looking through this, I can tell you off the bat that that should be a period, and that here this links to an external site. Get rid of that, just like we would here, and that instead of a comma, there should be a period there. That comma should not be italicized. Should use an N dash. And here we have a set of authors that needs to be updated, spelled out. And then you'll see that G goes before H, so this belongs up here. Walsh goes below those ones, so cut that out and stick it here. And now we get into the point of reformatting here. So here, let's take a moment to look at the APA style guide. So if you go to apastyle.apa.org, we see that there's this reference examples section. So in the reference we were just looking at, that's a TED Talk video. And as it happens, let's look at audiovisual media. There's a special thing for here because the TED Talks listed on their website, as opposed to on YouTube, don't show the day of publication. They just have the year and the month there. But look, you can see that the title is in sentence case, not title case, and just says video in square brackets, and it has this note here, TED Conferences. So if we look at this, we see, okay, that should be lowercase. So you can use the case tool here to set that to lowercase. We can see that should have the year and the month. We're going to need that the month. So, all right, well, easy way to find that. Just go ahead and open that link. And we see, oh, June 2013. June 2013. All right, June it is. And that the title should be in italics. No word file. Alright, so this next one, so again, period after the title. Now we look at this and we see that it just says Washington Post and 2020 January. Well, the Washington Post is a daily, and in fact it tells you here, oh, that was on the 21st. Alright, so now that's full. It has all the information it should be. So we have Gertzel et al. Hall et al., McGonigal, and after you do the author names, assuming those are identical, then you sort by the year. Then if the year's the same, you sort by the month. If the month's the same, you sort by the day. And then in this case, we don't have anything in the same year by the same author, but we just want to make sure that the one that comes alphabetical and then chronologically the first goes there. Okay, so looking at this here, you see a space thing like this that doesn't seem to be going to the next line. Often when you're copy and pasting, you can take a space like this and replace it with another space. Turns out that that was a link to an invisible character that was preventing those from separating. Okay, so let's look now here at what we have here. So we're missing authors on this one, and the rest seems to be mostly in place. So let's see what this article looks like, what our author list is there. So if we load that link, we see there's a lot of names. Now, you'll have to convert these to initials, but APA style, or APA 7th edition, now allows you for listing about 24 author names, which is a lot more than before. So if you're in doubt, go to the APA style website. So here we are at the references instructions, and we see we have a number of different things here. Let's look specifically at elements, because what goes in the author element is the concern right now. And we see, up to 20 authors, and if there's more, include the first 19 authors' names, ellipses, then the final author's name. Now, if we look at the list that we have here, this doesn't provide anything. What we want is the article itself. Now, if we go to that article, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, we're definitely going over here. So you want the first 19 names listed, then ... to the last one. And if there's a case where they have accidentally left something in, you want to make sure that you take it out. So in APA style, we don't list titles or degree names like PhD, VA, etc. That doesn't go in the reference list. So we need to clean this up. You can start by copy and pasting it. But, for example, here, you should abbreviate the first name of everyone, basically anything that's not their family name. Also remove their degree, like PhD, PhBA, and then make sure that you have abbreviated any first names and middle names accordingly. So this should be Gutzel, comma, R period, Z period. Then you have a comma, and then Rumor Enid, Chung would get turned into Rumor, E period, C period, comma, and then you go out on the parking lot to finish the rest in better weather. So, although this is a fantastic time saver to be able to copy and paste this information in, you do want to make sure you actually have all of it and you don't stop because you're too busy to come back. So here, Public Health Summit, we'll replace that with a period. Question is, what is going on there? And if you aren't ready to do that yet, or you don't want to do it now, mark it in highlighting so you know to come back. So if we look at this URL, you'll see they've given you a bunch of information to work with here. And one of these things should be the journal information. And so note, if you're zoomed in this much, you only get this on the page. If you zoom out a little bit, you get an idea of where else things are. And in this case, we see, April 2018, which is volume 60, issue 4, and then there's the page range, and a DOI in the old format. So if we look at this here, we see they have the link to the journal webpage. DOIs are the preferred topic, so let's go with that. They're the preferred format because they're standardized. And in this case, part of the standardization includes things that were previously inscribed. Can't change those easily, but something like changing the decorations on chapel or a museum exhibit, definitely doable. So you can see that the new format starts with https://doi.org, then there's the code. Alright, so now you can see what the references should look like, minus the cleanup. And if you start to do something and you realize, that's going to be a lot of trouble, I should come back with help for that, then a great way to do this is to leave yourself a marginal comment. So in my case, I'm going to go to Review and select New Comment. And then on the side here, I'm going to refer back to the instructions. And what should go here? Well, we need that info, the volume and issue number. We need the names. We also need to decide how this is being used. Now here we've got the working DOI, so let's take a look at that too. And see, that information on the Health Summit should go here. So the volume is 60. Issue is 4. Page range is 322-330. Alright, so you'll need to fill that in, but this is the set of readings from this specific week and how to format them. And you see that it didn't take much time here. Most of what I was doing was explaining things that I'd already shown. So make sure that's in alphabetical order, and then however you choose to discuss them in applying to that, some of them will come up, and any that don't, you can demolish. Of course, not on the spot, but you get the idea. Alright, so we've talked through some of the tasks here with realizing this, and I think that's a good point for us to be pausing now. So, if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu, to schedule an appointment with us online, or visit the Online Writing Center website. Have a good evening.